Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 9th, 2022 Planning Board meeting. If we could please first stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start tonight with correspondence, which we have some. Anybody have any comments, concerns?
None.
No.
Okay, John, we good?
We're good, yes.
We're going to move on to the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2022.
We'll just, I want to make sure you're okay with the Taco Bell sign, I imagine, you think, right? Take a look at that.
Yes, I was in there.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Any questions about the meeting minutes?
None.
Okay, if there's no questions, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2022?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to move into the regular portion of the meeting. First on the agenda is the Martinez subdivision. This is a discussion about a mitigation plan, location 1767 Jacob Road. And it's the famous Joe Arena.
Hello, everybody. Joseph Rena, the Principal Site Design Consultants. When we were here the last time, we presented a plan to modify the mitigation originally approved in the Martinez subdivision, which is now owned by Jay Levy. So what we're doing is phasing the mitigation improvements so they correspond to the disturbances related to the two different lots. The front lot, the disturbance is more minimal. It's more buffer than any small amount of wetland. And when the rear lot, lot 2.1, is developed, it's going to have a majority of the disturbance, and that should therefore bear the majority of the improvements. So we asked you to look at that. You thought it was a good plan, and we're hoping we can get a resolution on that so
Okay.
that he could start.
There was a Conservation Board memo. Have you seen this?
I have not.
It was dated April 21st, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
It says the applicant should prepare a plan with delineated
Oh,
conservation.
I did see that. I'm sorry. Yes, I did. And that's on the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, we addressed that.
All right, so that's all.
We addressed that memo. I'm sorry. Yep.
Problem.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a resolution in front of us. Have you the opportunity to take a look at it?
Yeah, I saw a draft. It's
Any
fine.
issues?
Nope.
Counselor?
Nothing from me.
John?
Nothing here.
All right, so we have a resolution in front of us approving a phased wetland mitigation plan for the Martinez subdivision as revised. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good luck. I'm gonna note that Garrigan just got here. He should be docked. Hey.
Go ahead. We were going to have such a short meeting, you would have missed it.
That's right.
All right, so we're going to move from the regular portion of the meeting into the work session. First on the agenda in the work session, that is postponed. The first one, Lakeview Estates, Lot 6, has been postponed by the applicant. Next, number 5, we have the Staples Plaza Battery Energy Storage System expansion. This is a discussion of a special use permit. Location is 3,333 Compound Road. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. I have instructions on how to. Can I connect?
Yeah,
Okay.
by all means.
Hello.
How are you guys?
It's a pleasure to see you again.
So, how's everything going?
Going great. Thank you
Good,
very much.
good.
Thank you, and thank you to the whole board and the team for your continued interest for energy project. It seems like there's a lot coming your way, so
Yeah.
I hope.
Just for the record, say who you are and who
Sure.
you're working for.
Sure. Mazia Deleli from IPP Solar, and we have here.
Yes, Bernardo Borges, Mayflower Energy Engineering. I'm an engineer supporting the development of this project with Major IPP Solar.
Thank you.
Okay, so should I give a quick introduction about us. I mean, I think you guys know us, but I'm happy just for the record to give a.
Maybe just for the record, real quick.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So IPP Solar, we are a solar development company. We've been in business since 2008. We have developed 70 plus solar systems and energy storage systems, charging stations for electric vehicles, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, based in New York City. And we did initial project at the same site a couple of years ago with the first energy storage coupled with community solar in the state of New York. We had a nice event with back then Lieutenant Governor Hochul, who came and did the ribbon cutting. And so, as you know, the state has very high targets for energy storage and solar, and we are here in that context, trying to add some more battery storage to the same site. In the back, this comes after a preliminary hearing or meeting we had with you last year, in which we gave a quick presentation and wanted to just to get a sense about what would be perceived based on the new locations we are proposing. And so we are here to introduce a sort of a new iteration of that, and just hopefully see that hopefully that is something that work for you guys, and looking forward to your comments. So now I leave it to Bernardo, who can go into the weeds of it. Go ahead, Bernardo.
Yes. Good evening, everyone, again. This project here, just recapping here, we had in 2019 the first New York State Community Solar Battery Integrated Project that was in Yorktown. Was planning board approval back in November 2019. We started construction somewhere in mid-February 2020. And we finished and operated the system completely by the spring. So it took a couple of months to install this battery system. The battery has been operating since 2020, no issues, no surprises there. Pretty straightforward technology. Here's a photo of where the battery currently is. For those that have not seen it, behind the Staples Plaza Mall, it's in the back of it there. And these are the photos of the current installation. And we wanted to touch base on the fact that this technology, what you see in the photo over there, is an old Tesla power pack technology. And the energy capacity about 1900 kilowatt hour. That was 2 to 3 years ago. What we have moving forward is a Tesla Megapack. So the photo here is of 4 units. I don't want you guys to get confused. This is 4 separate units stacked together. We're proposing 3 of these at the Staples Plaza at different locations for a total capacity of almost 10,000 kilowatt hour.
And if I could, what is the existing capacity now?
The existing capacity is almost 2,000 kilowatt hour.
And you're going to go up to what? 10,000?
9,241.
And
The technology, the size, what's happening is the technology is improving so fast
Yeah.
that for almost the same footprint,
Yeah.
you get more energy capacity. The density of the batteries are getting better and better. It's actually surprising to see how the technology changed over this period of time.
It's only a few years.
Yeah,
And it's that.
yeah. Well, the mega package is slightly larger, as you can see here. That's a power pack. It's not so unitized. The mega pack it comes as a package. So I should have a photo of single one, so you don't get confused. Over there in the photo, we have 4 of them. So 2 in the front and 2 in the back.
So you said that technology is really
Yeah, the power
exponentially-
density is definitely moving fast.
And I know part of the concerns the first time around was the codes were brand new at the time.
Right.
This was really kind of a brand new thing. As you said, it was the first one in the state.
Right, the first one in the state.
How much have the concerns that were then kind of dissipated with fire and?
Well, there is a UL listing. There is I should have. I think it is in the package. It has 9540 UL listing, 9540A fire testing. Because this is a modular package, is a container, kind of a solution. So it has more ratings than the Power Pack. It's a more modern product.
So everything, not only the ability to store power, but the
Increased and also the
everything, the
safe-
fire safety, everything's gotten a lot better in the
Yeah,
last.
it has more ratings than the Power Pack. The Power Pack, I think, is that discontinued? Or
Yeah,
they still have
they
it?
no longer make those.
They don't.
make
Yeah, they
these
don't have.
now.
The one that we have right now at Staples Plaza, the Power Pack, is no longer available.
So what happens to that when it's pulled off now? It's decommissioned, or is it used somewhere else, or?
We'll keep.
No, that one is gonna operate probably another good 10 years.
Okay.
You know, it's gonna operate. Now, it's possible that the way the technology and the economics work will sort of make us replace it by a megapack, because what we are seeing, as everyone knows, price of energy is just skyrocketing. It's just incredible, particularly even electricity. And for the same footprint, as the density goes up,
Yeah.
it may be worthwhile just taking this one out.
Yeah.
Just the one that has way higher energy density. There's going to be a
crossing point where it
crossing
makes
point.
sense to. It's not that it's a requirement to replace it. It's just that because you can buy a more modern battery that has more capacity and it functions better, the economics are there that it makes sense to replace it.
Yeah.
But it could
sounds
be
like-
there for 10 years.
It's just like you would change your cell phone every 3 years, same thing. You know, probably.
So this is the current installation. This is what we are proposing. We're proposing 3 new Tesla Megapacks at 2 different locations at the Staples Plaza. This is I wish I could highlight it here. This is the actual drawings that were submitted to the town. 2 batteries located here and 1 battery located here. I should have shown where the existing one is. The existing one is around this place here in the
No,
mouse.
it's further in the left.
Right? It is a little. It's hard
If you can zoom in.
to zoom in here, but I have a different photo. I have
Okay, he has a different photo here that.
yeah. So this is a map view, a satellite photo of the current the 2 locations for the batteries.
So yeah, last year when we did the Zoom meeting, if you recall, we had proposed to pick the back of the building, or there is a grass area by the property line in the south, and the general comments were that it was better to keep it away from the property line, away from the neighbors. We understand that looks sensible. So we have this proposal to put it just in the back of the building, and there is a fair amount of setback relative to anything. It's really far away from anything.
I think
What's
that-
there now?
The closest setback I think is 110 feet from property line. I could open the drawings here as well, if you guys want to see the
So-
setbacks.
What's over there where the proposed site? What's there now?
Okay, so on the right side, if you know that there is a storage company in the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
So on the right side, it's sort of there is an elevation, and you have a parking area. So that's for the right side, and the left side is really the back wall of the Staples, and there is a loading dock there, and so that's where it is.
Are you losing any parking, or you're not?
No,
No,
actually no.
No
We, where it is on the right side, it's
It's the island between.
it's an
parking.
island. It's an island.
An
So
island,
you're-
okay. Yeah, I can see it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we're not losing any parking.
Okay.
And on the one on the left side, it's also some
Some kind of island as well.
it's actually there are some
Can I ask a
there's some
question?
landscaping.
Okay, does the landlord pay for this?
Okay, I don't have the good answer for you on that, because let me explain to you why. The logistics of the world is falling apart. I'm sure a lot of you know. It's just you can't get this thing at least for another year, minimum. And we're still working on the financing.
Okay,
It's very
so
possible. I don't know
My
the
other
answer.
question would be,
how does your company benefit?
Sure.
You sell the power to
Yes.
Tesla?
No, we are the developer, so we basically
Yeah, but you're not doing this for
no
because
no
you
no.
like
We,
to.
we generate a fee as a developer and as an installer.
How do you generate how do you generate your revenue?
Just like the first project we did under the community solar program. So the power will be sold to the Con Ed residential customers in the area, just like the first one.
So you're selling power to the grid pays you for the power.
It's not to the grid. I just want to be,
Well,
the
to the
choice
local-
of words here can be very,
But that's how
you
get your cash.
yeah, we actually sell it. The community solar subscribers subscribe to the production of this system, and they buy the credits at a discount, typically 90% of what they are paying. And so they generate savings, and we get revenues that way.
Thank you.
Any questions? What are the next steps here?
Well, to continue to develop the proposal, but my first question is, I do recall, of course, that we spoke to you, I don't know, a year ago maybe?
That's right, about a year ago, a little bit more.
But what I don't remember is that the decision to put it so close to the structure, and I think that's a question that should be gone through, because we had a lot of discussion at the first one and the second one about safety and emergency response, and my understanding at this point is that if there is an emergency at these types of apparatus, that the way to handle them is basically for the emergency responders to form a perimeter and make sure it doesn't catch anything else on fire.
Sure.
Not an easy way to put them out, and they do
Yep.
do what they do until the emergency is
Yep.
over, right? Essentially.
Correct. Yep.
So that means there's no good way to stop. If there is an emergency, I wonder if putting them this close to the structure is wise.
So we should
That's
probably,
something that should be, I think, discussed and talked about.
There's,
so that
there's no
the-
statutes, there's no rules on setbacks from buildings on these things?
I'd
code.
have to go into our special permit on it. I don't think so, because we didn't we were one of the first ones.
Yeah.
How about New York? Does New York have anything?
the state code would have,
We
but
followed the NYSERDA model law for the
Yeah.
most part on the batteries, not so much on the solar, but on the batteries, definitely, so.
does the state code address the proximity to the building now?
They have they proposed, they have the model law, the national model law that we are recommending to a lot of towns to follow. They don't have a specific,
The building code doesn't have anything specific?
no.
All right, so I think it would be wise to forward this to the fire inspector, fire department, and the building inspector.
Yeah, and I think it might be a good exercise to see if there's other places on the site that may fit into some of the things that we want to do, which is keep it far enough away from the neighbors that it's not an impact to them when it's operating properly or when it is not operating properly, and also that it's not a impact in the case of emergency to the building. And there may be some sites
Sure.
I think we should look at.
So first, sort of comments I would make is that, obviously when we came, it was the first project, and since then, I haven't been really keeping track of what has been going on here, and so I don't know if you had some other requirements since or not. We are certainly happy to comply with any new requirements that you may have, and if that means adding an extra safety features, we are more than happy to do so. Now, to be honest with you, John, I don't think that there are other better spot than these two that we are proposing. We really looked to it in detail, and you and I can go through that exercise if you like, but so that's because we also not losing parking spots. Now, there are ways to address the concerns about proximity to the building. Actually, the one on the right is not that close to the building because it's a very long stretch of maybe 100 feet. So we can, the two that are on the right side, we can bring them further out with at least 10 feet if you like.
More than 10 feet from the building.
So we can maintain a nice distance for the ones on the right side if you want. For the one on the left, what I could propose, if you feel that they are too close, we could potentially build an extra wall, concrete wall, that would be an extra layer of protection.
Okay, so
And
this is the kind of discussion that I think
I'm happy to, perfect.
add, and the kind of, look at
Sure.
the project you guys and we should take, so.
Absolutely.
And one other thing, related but unrelated, is part of the requirement of the approval from the first battery was to do training for the fire folks
Yes.
here. I don't think that's been done yet, at least I've been
Actually,
told.
we did.
Okay, so they are saying no, so,
I have paid the bill to Mike Rogers, to Paul Rogers.
okay.
And
That's
look,
another thing that we have to go through.
trust
to make
me.
sure that before we get another one, that they're
no,
what
look,
they're doing.
I don't know,
paid the bill.
maybe they had
Was
a
the
different
service
type of
rendered?
training at the bar. I don't know, but I can tell you that we have been incredibly scrupulous about every detail of the project. We installed every signage, camera, whatever was promised. So trust me, we've been good on that, and I can.
I'm just passing along, and I'm here to just make
We
sure
will
that
verify
everyone's
that.
got what they need, and I'm just facilitating. So if it happens already,
Could this be something that you forward us, the fire department,
yeah,
regarding
I'll connect
training?
you. I'll connect you with the guys. Yeah.
Whoever said there is no, because we want to double check that, because this has been paid.
Like I said, any bells on whistle, whatever you guys want us to make this safer, just tell us. We'll do it.
Know who your contact person at the fire?
Yeah, I can find. I remember the gentleman who was also. He's a fire inspector. I can't remember his name. It's been a little while, but I have it in my computer. So, we'll talk to him and. But I guess the best is for you to sort of initiate the conversation and then.
Email, and which I will then
Wherever your
connect with
current
some
one
people, and we'll get kind of
Right.
a multiple person email chain going.
Yeah.
John, did we ask for containment for the batteries on Jefferson, down in Jefferson Valley? Because they came with batteries, and I think we asked for containment.
They came. The containment was actually the unit themselves, which has cooling and also fire suppression,
Oh, okay.
and so that was in
That's
the
how
unit,
we got it.
which I'm assuming that this has as well.
It's very different.
Okay.
This is not a container. This is an enclosure.
So you are listed.
It's there is, because the difference is the other ones you are referring to, probably somebody can walk inside. This one you cannot walk.
At first, it was like that, but it's not anymore. It was changed. The technology. I'm gonna read back to you your speech. The technology has changed so fast.
Okay.
that
They
they've
came back
also-
for a change.
They came back for a change to modify it.
So look, I mean, whatever it's required, you tell us. We like a lot of time went by since last time. If you guys have new requirements, we're happy to comply. Just tell us what you feel that is needed, and we'll do it.
But
Where,
John, just
where are the
for-
current ones?
The current one is, if you can go back, I can show it on the screen.
Just refresh. Over there?
If you look in your package, S100.00 has a full site plan.
100-0-0. I got 10. Okay.
And so on the left, or what is the westernmost proposed battery
Yeah.
storage, there's a setback line that says 157 feet to property line.
Yep.
Right where that 157-foot node is roughly where that unit is.
It's at the edge of the property.
So the other one's right next to it's right next to it? Is that what you're saying?
The new one is across the access road from it.
Oh, okay, so this one's
This one
on the
see-
west side.
Yeah, do you see the 157 feet?
Yeah.
The existing unit is right there. It's in the parking lot.
So why can't the new ones be placed next to the existing ones, which are
Because we're
far
gonna
enough?
lose parking spots.
What?
We're gonna lose parking spots.
Well, if I recall correctly, this site has parking, reserved parking along the back, which was held as a parking conservation strip. which could give you additional spaces.
That's the route, yeah.
I mean,
If that's the route, I mean.
I can speak to the landlord and just bring it up. It's because, you know, I think that, I don't remember, you probably know that better than I do, John, but do you think that we're not already below the ratio that is required here?
I don't think we're below the ratio currently. There has been a lot of changes to this site, so we always, when we're speaking about it, we always have to come back and go back and refresh our memories to what is there, which we will do. But again, going through, you know, the planning of it, I think we should look at other locations just to make sure that
Wouldn't it be ideal, wouldn't it be desirable if all of these units are grouped together for?
You know, actually,
as a-
that's debatable. It's debatable. It's debate. I mean, if somebody, because I can be the devil's advocate and say, look, you know, if one catches on fire, you don't want to have them all at the same location. It's better to have them. In fact, it costs me more money because I have to run wires from every. The other thing is that if you have them all pulled in the same location, then we definitely need to, from a visibility, it may start looking really terrible. It looks like a completely, we're going to need to really block the view, but then if you block the view, you don't see what's going on. I mean, you know, there's just a lot of other things that come into play. Again, we are talking. You tell me, listen,
I'm just thinking-
you know, let's put it there.
I'm just picking up on the proximity to the building issue. If you've already got some that are tucked off on the side there in the corner of that parking area, it might be worth looking at.
I
that.
think it's a good idea for the single unit, the one that is closer to the building, to address the concern about the proximity. It is a good idea to consider moving close. If we can take some parking space, that would be a nice proposal.
Yeah.
The double unit is actually far from the building. It can be moved a little south. It's not that close to the building, if that's a concern.
Okay.
All right, so maybe we should individually go out and take a ride through there. See, because I'm also concerned about, again, the screening from the neighboring
Right.
properties. We want to make sure whatever we proposed last time kind of took hold, and if anything else is needed, that it's done. And in the meantime, we could send it off to the fire department, the building department for their look at it, and then we could double check our records.
And like I said, a nice little section of concrete wall right next to it, you know, can really work as a block to
All right,
any.
so you got to show us.
I mean, I'm just saying, think
Yeah, yeah.
about it.
No, I get
it's
it.
an idea that
I think a lot of the fears that everybody had when the batteries first came out, I don't think there's been any complaints, any issues in the time that it's been done. So I think a lot of those fears have been, you know, extinguished. But I think we all will take a ride out there, take a look at what's out there.
Let's have a look.
And you guys think about what I think Aaron and John have said, and we'll work on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to be. We have to mature. Like I said, we've worked on so many projects. We've learned so much since the
Oh,
first one. So we start sort of knowing, okay, this is a pretty decent spot to pick. But I don't pretend I have all the answers. So you guys, you know.
All right. No, I think it's something that we need moving forward. It's clearly the future, and
Right.
all right.
If you could please include me in the conversation with the fire department. No, our fire department is very dedicated, very good at what they do. So
Sure,
I wanna
absolutely.
make sure that that's straight.
Absolutely.
I don't think they were out drinking.
If you don't mind, because I don't think I have your email address, so if you can,
Yeah, just throw me an email and I'll get everybody on the same email.
fantastic.
So, John, we follow up with you regarding the fire
Yes,
and the location as well, the discussion for the locations. We continue with you.
yes, please.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And we'll
Right.
coordinate with any other
So
members.
you're the point contact.
Yeah, we'll be the point person.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
everybody.
Good to see you.
Thank
All
you.
the best.
Bye now.
Thank you.
See you. All right, I'm going to mispronounce this next one. This is a town board referral. It's Ario Stormwater Permit, 2823 Hickory Street.
Nobody here? Westchester Module?
This is a referral.
Yep.
This is, referral on an MS4. 320 cubic yards of excavation. Dan, did you have anything on this?
Evening. So you have two of them tonight that are referrals. One of them is a tear down, and one of them, the house is already gone. I believe it was a fire, or I'm not sure why it's gone, but it's not there anymore.
Okay.
But there was a house on the Flanders Drive one at one time. So then it's just over the threshold that both of these new houses are over the threshold that require a town board approval. And I guess you're seeing both of these as a referral.
Well, we don't have plans or,
What do we get?
There's plans for the Arroyo.
do I have it here?
And Dan, over the threshold of what? What's the?
There's one
I think
drawing.
it was like,
Well, the 200 yards is if they have 300, so that's over.
but it was the square footage, I think, the,
Square footage.
Yeah, there's drawings on that one.
Square footage is 20,000 for the town board, right?
There's the house.
Do we have any concerns?
On the Hemlock Street, Hickory Street,
Yeah.
that's the tear down?
yes.
Is, I would just wonder, is the house being placed basically in the same position that it was?
Yes.
Yeah, then I don't think there's much to talk about.
Okay.
Flanders, I think it's the same thing. That is an old subdivision. But again, I would just, if you're following generally what the neighborhood layout is, then nothing to speak
Yeah, and I mean,
about.
there was a house on that lot previously.
Going back
I'm not
Jen-
quite sure what it had been knocked down a couple of years ago. I don't know the circumstances, but.
I think that was a fire.
Yeah, that's what it says. It's been,
So-
the house has been demolished.
You know, just as, I guess the recommendation would be that the town board and the town engineer make sure that the neighborhood, the characteristics of the neighborhood are followed in terms of front yard setbacks, and, so you matching the design and character of whatever the subdivision was, which I doubt is much different. There's not too much really to do on a lot of the sites.
So should we put that on Dan to verify, or should you take a look at it?
Well, I think that can be your comment to the town board for Dan to verify.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do a memo.
All right, so we'll same memo for both?
Sorry, Rich, is the fact that the Hemlock one's on septic impacted at all? Anything to be concerned there?
But on a new application, they'll have to, because it's a tear down, they'll have to deal with the health department.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right, but it will affect where the house is placed, of course.
Right.
So, yeah, so.
right, okay.
Well, all of those, by the time you fit all of those on the site, I'm sure it's gonna end up pretty close to what it was, and so, I don't
I
see
mean,
too much.
it is one of the streets that's slated for sewers, but not in time for them to benefit from it. So they'll have to prove out a septic, because I'm sure it's an older septic system in there that's probably not compliant with the new codes.
Well, that's gotta get county board approval, so. All right, so we'll use the same letters then for town board referral on 2823 Hickory Street and 3628 Flanders Drive.
Motion.
That sound good? All right, so we'll do a memo?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you don't need a motion. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
And I'll say aye.
All right, next on the agenda is the Pied Piper Preschool. This is discussion of parking. Locations 2090 Compound Road. I am going to have to recuse myself. I'll get a letter to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Take my phone.
This is the one where the asphalt is waiting, right?
It's on my agenda, but I do have stuff in the package. Just wasn't bagged. No, like, see, like this, goes La Calamita to Underhill. But I have the Pied Piper in the middle there. Yeah, 116.
Okay,
Hello, everybody.
good evening.
With me tonight is the owners of Pied Piper, Kathy Deneen, Minnie. As you know, that the project is under construction. You're all aware of the site plan that was approved for this project, the expansion, modification to the parking lot and drainage. So we're at the point where we're completing the parking lot, and the owners became aware that one of the modifications we were making to the site plan affected an outdoor play area that's existing, and they would really like to save it because it's valuable to them. And Kathy will explain that to you in more detail. So to point out what the change is here, this line right here, it's a little easier for me to do it from here. This line right here is where we had proposed to move the fence to. And then the parking was going to be 6 head-on parking spaces. 6 head-on parking spaces that were directed right at this fence. So this area right in here is the play area that which they would like to maintain. So what we're proposing to do is take those 6 parking spaces there and angle those parking spaces, because by pushing them back, we have a reduced backup area. But by angling them, we have plenty of backup space. We had John and Robin come out there at 9 a.m., which is kind of the peak time for drop-offs of children in the morning. And the loss of the 2 parking spaces, I don't believe is going to affect anything or in any way affect the operation of the drop-off of the children in the morning. So that's the modification we're looking to make. And I'll let Kathy just explain why it's important for her to have that outdoor area.
Good evening.
Well,
First of all, when we looked at this, it all looks great, but until you see actually how it impacts your building and how it looks when it's done, that's when it really hit me. I apologize, we really waited too long, but we were just kind of to wait to see how things were falling into place. And these plans were also drawn pre-COVID, when outdoor space was not as important. Now, anything you can do outside, whether it's an outdoor classroom, an outdoor table, this spot was also used for our extra hand washing stations, which there were 2 for 2 years. There was a screening area where parents could wait while children got their temperatures taken. I would much prefer to remain inside a fenced-in area. Now we would have to push anything like that to the playground or to the parking lot area. So this outdoor space now we see as being far more valuable than we did 2 years ago. So this is something we would really like to hold on to if at all possible. We also feel that the loss of those 2 spaces because of the change in the direction won't have much impact on our school. We could also ask our staff to park there, as well as my family, because we're there at weird hours, so it really wouldn't be as much of a problem when parents are pulling in and out of the facility. So for those reasons, we really would like to hold on to that tiny little parcel, even though it doesn't seem like much. When I'm looking at the longevity of the school and the needs of the school moving forward, that is a pretty important piece of land for us.
how wide is that strip that you're talking about? A fairly narrow piece it's going to be a play area, and it's going to be immediately adjacent to the angled parking.
Correct.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to my mind is what safety measure, what's in between that play area and the parking spaces?
The existing fence that's there now will remain. There's a chain link fence there now.
Mhm.
It's currently used as parking now, right?
Is any of this parking on a church property?
No.
No, it's the dividing line that you could see the heavy line between the church and the school property there.
This is that little area where you would come in,
Where we used to come in before the addition, yes,
right, you would come in and you would walk up, and then the door would be on the right, and that's how you would enter the school?
correct.
We're
Yeah.
actually essentially just keeping the front of the building the exact way it's operating for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That same line that has been there since 2002 is going to remain there. The same parking, in fact, is going to be improved because now it's going to be paved with lines, whereas right now we just have people parking on a diagonal with no demarcation of actually where to park. We joke that's the family parking lot because we all park there because we know you have to park on an angle, and because we don't really want clients parking too close to the main road there, you know, with their children exiting the vehicles. So that's just going to remain the exact same as it has always been.
So I don't want to dampen the project, or, you know, I want the play area to stay if that's a good thing to do. What is a chain link fence sufficient separation between the parking spaces and the play area? Or should there be something a little more substantial?
Like
Just-
ballards?
I'm
Well, I
just
think
thinking
now,
about,
actually, the plan, I think now, correct me if
There's
I'm
a
wrong,
walkway.
is there's actually going to be a curb cut as far as, you know, pavement goes, so that there will be blocks so that the cars can't proceed past where the
Yes,
blocks are.
there's a curb
is
cut
that
there.
shown on here?
It's going to be curbed,
Curb cut.
yes.
So it's actually
There's,
Okay.
there's now,
better than it is right now.
It says relocated concrete curb. I guess that's the whole heavy red line is
Right.
going to be a curb.
correct.
Because right now it's just straight dirt and then a fence.
Right.
You know, I mean, if a car was going 50 miles an hour, I would be worried. But they're not, you know, they're coming around, they're coming in either on the side of the church and looping through or on the west entrance, right? So they're not speeding through the parking lot and they're making their way
Oh,
up there.
We have a history in town
Well,
of strange vehicle movements from
Tell
time
me
to
about
time,
it.
you know?
Can you do a timber rail fence?
Hey, Joe, with where the diagonal parking spots are there,
uh-huh.
was that ever intended to be a travel lane?
Yes, under the previous plan, that would have been part of the travel lane, but more, we needed that width. It's a one-way, right? So if it's a one-way, it needs to be 17 feet at least. But it was originally wider because we needed that backup room because the cars were perpendicular to the
Oh, right.
to the driveway, right? So we needed that additional backup room. But now, because they're angled, you don't need that backup room anymore. So we're able to make it work. You know, we have like 19 and a half feet now as a travel way there.
And there's a new fence there in the front that is iron, it's not chain link.
Yeah.
It's a higher iron
Well, it's
fence.
like one of those gates.
Yeah, one of the nicer ones,
Yeah,
yeah.
They're actually made of anodized aluminum, I think.
You're also not traveling with your car kind of like going
Looks like a
toward
horse,
the
right?
fence. You're actually going parallel to the fence as you enter. You know,
Exit, yeah.
Can you do a small timber guardrail?
Which is
What?
like a small timber guardrail.
I don't know.
Is that
I
something?
don't know what that is.
Like a guardrail, but made out of timber, out of wood.
Oh,
Would be right up against the fence.
right up against the fence. I can
It
answer
won't,
that.
it won't affect your space. It'll affect your pocketbook a little bit by comparison, but it will save probably what Aaron is speaking to, those really terrible accidents that happen that nobody could expect would ever happen, but sometimes do, from becoming something really terrible. So
Would it be on the fence?
be,
would
well,
be
you could do it in
against
front of the
the
fence or yeah.
Okay.
Would be in front of the fence and against the fence. So you'd have wood posts in the ground.
Oh, like those Ballard things.
You like ballads better?
I don't know that we've had those in the past. Yes.
Because
Okay.
we could do bollards instead. We could do timber bollards
You just
instead.
have,
Okay.
you probably have to do more
More
of
of
them.
them,
than
Right,
not.
right, because they would have to be spaced
Spaced.
so that a car can't get in between them, right?
Okay.
And you'd want a car to have at least two of them, not one. So
Right.
Cars
But-
parked here.
you could do a timber guardrail, you'd have a post in the ground, wood post, and then a wood planking going across horizontally.
Oh.
at bumper height.
Gotcha. Okay.
That'd be a triple added protection.
If you,
because right now it's the
when you
curb
go
and the
outside,
sidewalk, isn't it? And then the fence.
No,
right
there's no
across from the
sidewalk.
door, you'll
It's right up
see
against the fence.
a timber guardrail that
There's one
separates
outside.
there. It's kind of the same thing.
Okay. All right.
I would like that. What do you, any comments?
Makes
No,
sense.
that
When somebody shifts
makes
into the
sense.
drive
I
and
mean-
goes forward.
Anything for safety in front of the kids is,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you can't go better than that.
And so if cars are parked in those diagonal spots,
Right.
then the exit is done completely on the other property? And was
And
that was all
yeah, and they have
resolved, the
they
whole-
have a cross easement, so that was all established on the first site, on the first approval.
And then you have enough distance there for fire trucks and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right, we had already done a full fire truck movement plan.
And that's not affected by this, by moving the spaces out into that traveled way?
The minimum requirement for a fire truck is 20 feet, so we have 19 and a half feet to the line of the parking space. But really, most cars are not 18 and a half feet. And if there's a fire truck pulling in there, whoever's in those spaces is going to get out anyway before the fire truck pulls in. I'm not concerned. And there's also a landscape strip along the church, so there's actually some additional room there. If a fire truck has to ride that curb for any reason, they could.
Okay with that?
Okay, we're, how about you?
I'm all right. I mean, so I
You
think the
raised
idea
the
of
issue.
safety, I think the idea of
Well-
making sure that the play area is safe from any cars shifting into the drive and driving over the curb or anything like that would be great. There's no issue in terms of the parking capacity, because you're losing two spots, right?
Yeah, and they're for the most part, as they say, they park there because they don't want, and they're all transient spots because people are coming in, they're dropping off, they're greeted at the gate, right? And children are brought in, so it's not like the car's there more than
Oh, 2 minutes.
2 minutes,
Right.
you know.
No, I think the building looks beautiful.
Thank you. We agree.
Any other issues?
If you're okay with the reduction in the of the two spaces, I think, and with the addition of the either guardrail or bollards, then I think that's everything.
Okay.
Well, that would alleviate any problems that I would think about safety for the kids. I mean, the
So-
ballot would really stop
We
somebody.
could talk to
Yeah.
Bill
Really bad.
as to what the
What happens
most
now?
economical
Do
alternative.
we have
Come
to
back.
amend the approval on this?
You'll have to accept this change, yes, in some fashion, yes.
As a
Go
field
ahead.
change?
It's more than that, isn't it? I mean, Jim?
I mean, unfortunately, it's gonna have to go to a hearing to amend the site plan. It seems awfully overkill to do that for something
We can't
this small.
waive that requirement, or we have to implement that?
I mean,
If it is, it is.
it is, I hate to say it, but this is something John and I have talked about, changing the code to allow a waiver for something like this, or the problem with the international school. We had the same problem. They had to go
Right.
to a public hearing for a driveway.
Yeah, the question is the use, right? I mean, the public's interested in the use and, when impacts come in to their neighboring properties and things like that. So in my view, does this change the impacts of this use as established by the original approval to a degree that a neighbor might have some, interest because their impacts may change? I think that's the question. That's what Jim and I have
Right.
been talking about.
It's the same use. I mean, I wouldn't see any impact other than the church, only because that travel lane really is now that property. But if the cross easement is in place, then there's no issue there.
In reality, it's staying the exact same as the existing building that's been in existence since 2002. It's not like we're changing into something that's completely new, we're just keeping it as the status quo. Except for, obviously, paving it.
Well, at some point, the changes become de minimis. I mean,
This is a
we've
good
experienced
example of
several
that.
instances of that over the years where, I mean, just the battery went up in Jefferson Valley, they changed something, it was very small. Nothing significant changed on the site. I'm not sure anything significant is changing on this site except that, you know, the issue we already identified, but that's not necessarily a public hearing concern, in my mind.
A public hearing, but it does feel like an amended site plan, right? Because you're adding a.
Yes, technically true.
Right.
In the site plan.
Well, we have to be guided by counsel here.
Yeah, this is one of those that I really hate to insist upon, but it is what the code requires.
That's it.
A public hearing?
Yeah.
How much is that gonna set us back? We have to open in September, or this whole thing is, forget it, for me. I have to open in September.
Well,
Could allow them to possibly continue at their own risk.
Well, we don't have to give them permission to do that, do we?
No, I don't think so.
and we could set a public hearing for June and be finished that night.
Well, we can't do it, but for the 23rd.
No, they'd never get the notice out in time.
Not for the next one.
That's it.
Let's continue at my risk.
Just do it.
It doesn't
It
sound
means
so
you run the
good.
risk that we say that after a public hearing, our decision may not be to approve what you're looking for.
So then, everything that I do, that I want to do, if I go ahead and do that, so I can get a CO and I can get the state in there to look at the facility and get it approved by the.
We're only just talking about this corner.
Right, but I would need a CO in order to
Right.
even have the state come look at it. And I have to have that done in June so that they will approve it by September. See what I'm saying? So I'm on kind of a tight time schedule.
This is like step one in like a 10-step process for us to be able to open in September.
I get it.
Right.
There's-
The fire marshal has to come in.
There's a lot of
The state
things.
has to come in and re-inspect,
Right.
not just the town, the governing licensing boards.
I feel bad I didn't notice it earlier, but I really didn't, to tell you the truth, until they started putting lines down on the property. I'm saying, wait a minute, where's all this going? We never really realized it.
I know what you're saying. I'm having some renovations done on my house, and, you know, you look at the plan and you say, oh, this is what it's gonna look like. And then when it's
Exactly.
2/3 of the way done, you say, oh, this is what it's going on,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if we have, unfortunately, our counsel, you know, our attorney has advised us that we have to proceed that way. You can take our comments tonight and say, well, and think about what you want to do.
But then I'm
But
gonna
I
have
don't
to-
see, you know,
I don't see us rejecting what you want to do.
Okay.
It's just
So if you-
timing issue.
Go along and just do it.
So let's say we do this, and then the public hearing is what, the first meeting in June? So we're
Right.
talking about a month from now.
You'll already be completed by,
Well, we are, exactly,
Of
that's my
course.
point.
yeah.
And then we have the public hearing then, and then it's just,
and at that point, unless there's something that comes in
I
that
don't
we
see
have
anything
no
that would-
idea about, we're likely to
Detrimental to
approve.
what you want to do. I don't see it. But the circumstances, the law is the law. I mean, other people will come by and in the future or in the past, we had to treat them the same way, and we will treat them the same way.
Yeah.
It's not that, you know,
ask this then, because, you know, the preschool operates under a special use permit because of the location.
You gotta talk into the mic.
Step into the,
Sorry, Mom. The preschool operates under a special use permit that we renew every 3 years. And when we last renewed it in front of you, I believe it was a year and a half ago,
Yes.
the comment was that we would then have to amend that once the new building was done and have another public hearing based upon the larger school building. Is that something that we could combine all in one public hearing to amend the
What are you talking about?
Special use permit.
Oh, special use permit.
I mean, the site plan will be the same, right, Joe?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Could we just do that all in one?
there's no reason that I could think of why you couldn't.
Because that just might be a good,
but this is before us now, so.
yes. We were waiting, obviously, till the building was done to do the amendment of the special use permit.
I think you better get that in, if we want to do a public hearing in June, we have that, a time constraint on all that. And right now, there's only one application for modification before us.
And you know what? Maybe Aaron's right. Maybe you're just taking a chance for no good reason. Come
To put
back
it both.
later when
Come
you're
back
done,
later.
just in case there's something else you have to change.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe
This is-
that's
this-
the best
this is
approach.
Straightforward, let's just get that.
Okay. As long as you're okay with that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We'll see you in June.
Okay?
Okay, so
But
we have
Ju-
a vote
You'll
to
file
schedule a
something
public
to
hearing.
show the addition, of the guide rail
Yeah,
on there.
yeah, we'll get that on there.
Okay.
And we need a vote to schedule a public hearing for, what is that, June 6th?
You need a vote for that?
You don't need a
We
vote?
haven't done that.
Okay.
June 13th.
I mean, I think we should in general, but we haven't done that yet. June 6th? No, June 13th. Day before Flag Day. Okay,
Okay.
anything else on this one?
No.
All right, let's get,
So-
thank
so-
you. We got Rich back?
Not to belabor the discussion, but so at what point is a modification not too significant or not significant enough?
Well, that's what we have
That's-
to decide,
Yeah,
because right now it just says any change
right.
requires an amendment to a site plan, and any amendment to a site plan requires a public hearing.
Right.
And there are times like this when it really, we're gonna have to come up with something that, now, John threw out a good idea where the use itself is not changed. That's one.
Right.
You know, maybe where there's a reduction in the impact of a project, which comes up all the time, that there probably should be a planning board waiving a public hearing and just going right to approve a less impactful site plan. Those are some things John and I had talked about. We hadn't really fleshed it out.
Yeah, I think that it's important because, if one were to be literal about the whole thing, I mean, the smallest thing could be considered a change. Oh, we're going to go from a red stop sign to a square stop.
Guardrail itself
Yeah,
would be enough, yeah.
so, okay.
That's definitely a discussion, you guys, because it really, it's cumbersome, and it's inefficient.
Yeah.
And now it's gonna be another public hearing for something that's very basic.
Could we take this as an opportunity to forward a memo to the town board to say that you should investigate this because it's causing, artificial or unnecessary hardship on some of these applications?
To be quite honest, I think that's a great idea, and part of the discussion that I've, been starting is to, expedite some things. Not expedite them where it's, unlawful or anything like that, but there are just certain inefficiencies that I think, could be worked out.
Yeah.
Well, the planning
you
board
need
was
people
here
who need a
till
lot of
11:30 last meeting. And, to have things like this taking up time when you're already here till 11:30 is.
The challenge is,
And a lot.
that some people don't trust our judgment. And this is a judgment, right? This is the same use. It's parking spots, right? So they're reducing it by one, but
you
there's
would
not an
be
issue.
You'd be getting the same advice from John and I. And, there are all sorts of things that, putting in an ATM machine, for instance, if somebody wanted to do that, that's crazy to have them go through a public hearing to put in an ATM machine. But that's the way the code reads now, and it's something that should probably be changed.
Doesn't
Well,
Doesn't the state enabling legislation allow, if the town code didn't say anything, wouldn't the state laws allow us to waive public hearings on certain projects?
I don't think so.
Well, the
I think
chapter,
it's strictly zoning.
yeah, chapter 195 does give you the ability to waive some of the requirements in chapter 195.
Okay.
It does give you that. Secondly, contrary to what we're talking about, for instance, in our zoning code, there is a provision where if someone comes in on a commercial building and wants to do an addition, they can do that through the building department after it gets referred to us and also ran by you guys to ensure that it's not increasing any parking demand. And if you determine that it's not increasing any parking demand, you don't have to do a site plan approval. You can go right through the building department, provided at that point that we get a record copy. So, you know, there's conflicting ways of doing things within our own landscape.
Just the
That
way
opens
you
an
had-
approach
Yes.
that we could put into some of these applications.
Well, just like you just had, you're advising the town board on a stormwater permit. In that case, you'd be advising the building inspector on the impact of a proposed change.
Got
It would be really that simple, and that's a good example of something that should be considered to make the process more user-friendly.
So I like Aaron's idea, that we take this as an opportunity to put a letter to the town board suggesting that it be explored as to how better to do that, because it's incredibly inefficient.
Okay,
Very good. Thank you.
all right. Thank you.
We'll call it the Pied Piper clause.
Where's Rich? Oh, yeah. Two board members heard this discussion. You know.
That's right. He'll know to come in, I think.
Is Rich coming
I
back
think
in?
he's coming, no,
Rich has left the building.
he's coming.
I can hear him, he's out in the hall.
He's here. He's definitely here.
There he is.
Welcome back.
We got a lot done without you. We got a lot done without you.
Okay.
I think I'm at work.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. Okay. So, last time I was before you, I presented Dorchester Glen, which is a 5-lot subdivision, the Kincart family, at the end of Maxwell Drive and Dorchester Heights Drive. And you asked for it to be referred out, which it was, to Conservation Board and the Tree Commission. You got favorable, we received favorable memos from both those agencies, and we're looking to get a letter from the planning board to, if you recall, we were looking to do flexibility standards, so we'd like to get a letter from the planning board to the town board referring it to allow you to be empowered to use the flexibility standards, and also to set up a public informational hearing.
Yeah, and I think that echoes the Conservation Board's memo.
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
I think we should go move to public hearing, information.
Public informational hearing.
Public, yeah.
Well, yeah, on the flexibilities.
Yep.
Plan.
Yeah.
So, two things. You'll do the public informational hearing on the 13th, right? And we will send over a referral memo to the town board requesting authorization to use flexibility standards, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
No.
We do that we do that now without having the public information. We don't need to wait.
Public informational is just to get the knowledge to the surrounding
Right.
neighbors that there's a project in their neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay.
Nothing,
But we can ask for the flexibility.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do
Thank
the
you.
memo.
We'll do them.
All right.
Good.
All right.
Okay, so you got
Okay.
your flexibility, hopefully.
Okay.
All right, next we got Underhill Farm. This is discussion of a site plan, locations 370 Underhill Avenue. Joe Rena.
So, the last time we were here, we were asked to provide some additional information, a summary of the traffic, which Dr. Greeley is here to run through with you. Also here with with me tonight is Beth Seelig, and she gave a quick presentation the last time on the historical, but we're going to provide a more detailed presentation tonight. And she has, we had submitted the summary to you, a response to an MTA letter of inquiry, and the additional information regarding the historical. So I'm going to turn it over to Phil right away, and I'll let him get into traffic.
Thank you.
Good evening, Philip Greeley, Colliers Engineering and Design.
Do you need to bring anything
Yeah, just bring it to the beginning of that PowerPoint. So at the last meeting, we were asked to provide an executive summary of our traffic report because it's pretty voluminous. That document was submitted. It provides a summary of what was evaluated, information regarding the traffic generation for the site, some data relative to existing conditions, and what the additional traffic would be generated by the project at the various intersections, primarily focused on the Underhill Route 118 intersection, which was the main focus of the discussion. In terms of that document, also provided various improvement diagrams, which are proposed by the applicant and or being advanced to look at the master plan. We were asked to look at not only our traffic impact, not only the traffic impact from what's already been approved and normal background growth, but the what if. What if Kmart gets redeveloped? What happens to the reoccupancy of the Uncle Giuseppe space, and so on and so forth. So that's what's summarized in that little executive summary document. It shows each of the different improvement plans that were hashed out. And essentially, what the proposal here is that there be certain pedestrian and traffic signal upgrades to improve the efficiency of the Underhill intersection. There'd be sight distance improvements, work with the highway and police department on some of the speeding issues. There's other, design details that go into that. Initially, we would install what's called an RRFB, a rapid flashing beacon that would allow pedestrians to cross Underhill in the vicinity of the access to the project that exists today. So if somebody from Rochambeau wanted to come across, they would be able to cross instead of having to go all the way down to the corner, etc. We then lead into the project is designed to connect fully to Beaver Ridge, both pedestrians and vehicular traffic. There's traffic calming measures, traffic control measures, so that traffic really between the two developments and getting to and from Allen Street would function adequately. We're not looking at a thoroughfare, so there'd be no real through traffic. It's just laid out so that you can keep some of the traffic off the other roadways, similar to anything else in town where we have connections between commercial properties and connections when a new subdivision comes in connecting to an existing street. So that's the way the plan is designed. Those improvements would be done. The applicant has also done two design plans for the intersection. And that's where we can go back to keep going, go back. So, yeah, let's just stay on that for a second. So, some of the basic improvements are outlined in this drawing on the screen now, which is the crossing that I referred to, some of the features to address the blockage that occurs in the afternoon at Rochambeau and at Cardinal Court. We would be able to do some signing and striping improvements. And as I said, we would replace the detection at the intersection with a video detection, which allows the signal to react to exact demands at that time. Part of that would be also adaptive software, which again is something that the DOT is going to at locations. So that would be part of the improvement to offset any of the effect of our traffic at this intersection. And that would not solve the traffic for everybody else, coming forward. So we developed two additional plans. This is just the treatment of the connection between our project and Beaver Ridge Apartments. There'd be a controlled intersection, an extension of the sidewalk connection between the two projects. It would connect to the existing drive within Beaver Ridge, and that would allow, both pedestrian and vehicular connections out to Allen at the light at Kear Street there. So those would be the first level improvements. Then we get to improvements at the intersection. This plan here, which we've estimated, and I think the question came up about the design. So with design, this intersection would be about $800,000 to construct. And what this does is it provides pedestrian crossings on all four corners. It provides a separate left turn lane on Underhill Avenue on both approaches to the intersection. It provides, in lieu of the shoulder lane that's used today for traffic turning right off of 118 onto Underhill, would be a full depth pavement right turn lane, and of course a full traffic signal replacement to accommodate the pedestrian movements and those particular movements. As I said, this improvement is estimated at about $800,000, including design. The applicant is proposing to fund $450,000. Now, this is on top of the improvements that I showed you on the other two plans, which is estimated about $100,000 for those initial improvements. About $450,000 towards the design for this intersection and towards the construction, with the understanding that this is the plan that would go forward to accommodate additional traffic. We then looked at everything that's out there in terms of potential traffic, and again, this would be the master plan, which would be the next drawing. That goes one step further, and that plan, in addition to providing the turning lanes on Underhill Avenue, it provides separate left turn lanes on Route 118. Now, in order to install that, because you can't really widen towards the property because the stone wall, the grades, etc., and you have to maintain, we want to maintain that right turn lane heading southbound. Most of the widening would have to occur on the town hall side and in front of the Caremark property in order to get a separate left turn lane. So you would have, for example, on the southbound approach, you would have a right turn lane, a through lane, and a dedicated left turn lane. Northbound, you'd have a dedicated left turn lane and then a through right lane, and all the improvements that I talked about on Underhill. This plan is estimated to total at $1.5 million, including the work that was done in phase one, I'll call it. So just the improvements on Underhill Avenue is about $800,000, including the design. To add this extra turn lanes on 118, because there's going to be some retaining walls and other work, would bring the total to about $1.5 million.
That's design build? So 1.5 completes this project?
Everything.
And the other is 800?
Yes.
And is that based on today's prices?
That's based on today's prices. And then from, you say, well, how do we get this done? All right, so the impetus or the seed money is the $450,000, and you could build it in two phases, but our design would be such that all the signal poles, including the PED poles, would be placed where, when you come back in for the work on 118, there would be some adjustments, but you would place the signal poles back far enough so that when that lane is added, that you've accommodated it. So I think it could be done. Some improvements you can't do in a phased approach. This could be done in a phased approach. If the money became available, you could do the whole thing right under one contract, which would be, a possibility. And, how do you get to that point? So this would be the catalyst to get it to the point where you have a fully designed intersection for the master plan. Could be built in 2 phases. Where does the rest of the funding come from? Well, it could be some tax rebates to this client. As other projects come along, they would participate or put money, into the coffers to replace what was done to reimburse this applicant. State funding is starting to become available, but the most important thing to access that is to have a set of design plans.
So the $800,000 plan has everything except the dedicated left turn lane in each direction on 118.
Right.
Is that right? And can you summarize what the traffic operations differences are between those two? I mean, how much do you get for the extra $600,000 by adding those 2 turn lanes? How much operational efficiency?
Well, from
pain reduction do
yes.
you get?
Okay. So without the left turn lanes on 118, your ability to accommodate more through traffic and turning movements starts to diminish very quickly. So if you're looking at all the other development that's going to add turning movements and increase through traffic, that's the need to have those turn lanes on 118. In reality, the traffic today on 118 is less than what it is on Underhill in peak hours. Okay, so that everybody knows that. That's why you would do the Underhill improvements first, because that's where you have more of your turning movements. In terms of, what does it get you? Well, it increases your capacity significantly. If nothing else ever did get built, you would go from, levels of service, overall D and certain times F on the Underhill Avenue approach to levels of service C.
So is it fair to say that beyond just helping the traffic on 118, does it help the operations of Underhill as well?
Absolutely, because you now can reallocate the timing even further. So very simplistically, the first step is to reallocate timings with what we have today and squeeze the most capacity out of what's there today. The next step would be to get the turning lanes on Underhill, which just makes that more efficient, and it would allow you to take less time away from 118. And then by having the turn lanes on 118, now you can really reallocate, more efficiently throughout every hour of the day.
Now, would any land need to be acquired to make these
So
improvements?
in the executive summary, we would be providing land because to do the work on Underhill needs land.
Mm-hmm.
There would be land to do the turn lanes on 118. There would be land in front of the town hall, but the right-of-way actually gets pretty wide there.
Okay.
It continues fairly wide in front of the Caremount property, but there would probably be some easements, but this applicant actually controls that property, so if there was a grading easement, that would also be worked into the plan.
The curbs need to be relocated?
Yes. Oh,
on the
absolutely.
Caremark
Oh, yeah.
side?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So do you
The
know-
sidewalks. The reason why the added expense, you've got to reconstruct all the sidewalk for quite a distance, because you're not just putting the turn lane in. You have to transition back to the existing because of the high speed on 118. So there's a lot of curb work. There's utility relocations. There's reconstruction of sidewalk, retaining walls. So absolutely.
So the $800,000 plan, that also includes the right turn lane on 118 onto Underhill. Am I correct
Yes,
in assuming
that's correct.
saying that?
That's correct. And that doesn't require the long taper. And on that side, you don't have sidewalk. Basically, what you're doing, you're excavating out the shoulder, putting in as full depth pavement, and then replacing the shoulder up to the stone wall that exists there.
So you would have the left turn on Underhill, coming down Underhill, the left turn onto 118.
Correct.
And then you would have the right turn coming down 118 heading south onto
Correct.
Underhill.
And that would be under a signal control, which it isn't today because people are basically using the shoulder. So there's no separate control for that. It would be under a arrow control. So when pedestrians,
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish here.
fully controlled.
And the applicant would provide 450,000 toward that on top of the
In the other work,
initial work that you're talking about.
correct.
That number was different. Okay.
It's being refined as we go, I guess.
Now, the
Well,
road
the original estimate was 750 without the design.
So in terms of, is there an overall level of service for the intersection as it is today?
Yes, depending on what time period. So overall, if you look at the intersection, it's operating at level of service D, E, but in the afternoon, you get an F level of service on Underhill because it backs all the way up because of the left turn
Now,
conflicts.
when the project goes through
Yes.
and you do the first mitigation
Yes.
package that you're proposing to do as part of your project, what is the level of service?
That brings it back to better than what it is today, slightly better, not
only-
not significant, but it offsets the
So
traffic.
The signal timing, some of the changes that you make on Underhill in terms of sight distance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The really minor improvements, other than the signal timing and the camera, right?
Well, and the RRFB for the crossing, that's costly, yeah, and some
that-
drainage improvements, yes.
So that manages your site-generated traffic and
Correct.
improves it overall from it as it operates today.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. And when you do, if we did the $800,000 plan, what would the level of service for that overall?
It gets rid of any F level of service.
Okay. So it gets rid of any afternoon F level of service coming
Correct.
from Underhill back into town.
Correct.
And it would be what? Do you think a D in the afternoon?
Yeah, I forget what that approach, I believe, goes to a D.
And D is what you would design a thoroughfare
Peak,
road to
peak
be?
hours, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, DOT is designing for E, but D is what you would push for. Ideally, level of service C, peak hours, level of service D.
So you would eliminate the F in the afternoon to a somewhat in a D, you think?
Yes.
And then the traffic that will be going through the Beaver Ridge site, do you have what those numbers are? Just
In
looking at
terms of volume, on a peak hour basis, fewer than 30 vehicles.
fewer than 30 vehicles
Yeah.
in the peak hour afternoon, let's say, will be using that thoroughfare
Yes.
in and out.
Yes. Total both directions.
And that relates to total site-generated traffic in the PM peak hour of about what?
So the afternoon rush hour is about 180 total trips. That's all use, residential and all the commercial uses, the full development.
It's about 10, 15% we're talking about? That goes the other way?
15% is what it, yeah.
I asked this a couple of times, maybe not out in public. Is there conversations taking place with Beaver Ridge yet?
I believe there are conversations, but I believe part of this is what the town board was working with in terms of the plan connection. So I don't know where that stands, but
Okay, so.
so if
I
there
think-
was no physical connection for vehicular traffic, I think pedestrians would probably still work their way through because it's almost there, to a certain extent. There would be another 30 vehicles we'd have to accommodate.
Okay. I happen to think that the board should not wait or rely on what the town board is doing with the senior center in order to plan for this site and that site to be operating properly. So I think it should move forward as if that agreement has no effect on this connection.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, I have very strong opinions on a multi. I'm going to tell you first a story. When the international school went in, the town received $30,000 to do a traffic study. I believe you might have done that study for the East Main Street corridor. That was some years ago. So it was planned out, I want to say it was probably 5 years ago now. I think
2017. Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah, it goes quick. Since then, there's been one improvement, which is a helpful one. They put a three-way stop at Stony Street. I live in Shrub Oak on the intersection of New Road and East Main Street. Our intersection, or a little turn, has been taken out in the last 2-3 months. I want to think 3 or 4 times. So we did planning, but because of costs and other things, I think some of the practice wasn't put into play. The biggest thing we heard with Costco and then Lowe's when it came in, and I think most of what we hear is traffic. I feel very strongly, and I'm going to ask you a few questions if you don't mind. So you reside in Yorktown.
Right.
For quite a few years.
35 plus, yeah.
Okay. And you're a doctor in engineering.
Yes.
And you specialize in traffic engineering for some time.
Yes.
So you really are, this is your cup of tea, as they say. And you're a resident. I feel so strongly that we go with the second alternative, the one that is going to cost. And I feel this because, and I'm not saying just on the applicant, I'm saying on the town, right? We've put in zoning now to kind of pull what we want to see in town. So we've planned, we've made all these changes for this overlay district so that developers will come in, they'll see what the town is doing, and they'll want to develop in town. They're going to want to improve our town, which we all want. This, however we get to this, is going to help every one of them as they move forward, unless I'm mistaken, right? So we're taking a step here to prove that we're not just putting the pen to paper on planning, but in development. And I feel very, very strongly that this is going to help the area. And everything I've heard is about the traffic outside the historic end of it. Traffic, 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 traffic. And I think the good doctor and the plan he's put together really looks like a lot of work was put into it. And I got to say, from the other jobs that the gentleman has done in town and the improvements we've seen, I think it speaks volumes. And I don't know how we get to this bigger project, but I think that's because again, I saw a $30,000 fee put into, and I'm not knocking the town. I know if money's tight and you can't do everything at once, but you know, and you're on a 5-year now, and this is something where you're going to see improvements to the town if this is put in place on day one. And I'm just talking about the traffic. I'm not talking about development. So I don't know how as a town we work towards that, but you don't want to, and I don't want to swear, but you don't want a half blanket. You want to go the full board here, right? Because we've invited people to, we've invited, the town's invited developers now to look at the town with the zoning. And I just think this is the way to if we're serious, and I think you guys, the town board was when they put that in place, well, now it's time to, you know, to put it into action.
You mentioned a couple of ways where, in the future, the applicant could get paid back. Can you elaborate on that?
So, there's tax rebates or abatements. It really depends on what comes down the line, too, in terms of this other development, okay? There's funding through the state, but you can't even go near that funding unless you have a designed plan. So my experience in other areas, in other municipalities, is that they go with a plan and they say, okay, this is what we're estimating it to cost, and you petition to get funding. One of the funding sources that I've seen is DASNY, the Dormitory of the State of New York, has funding for specific improvement projects in this criteria. There's other categories that this can fit into, so you can go the state route, but let's say there's no state route, then you could do it in forms of this developer pays a certain amount up front to get it done, and if no one else comes along, then he gets a tax credit. And then eventually, when someone else comes along, the town could require, and nothing is set up in the town right now, but like a mitigation fund or something that could go towards, reimbursing basically the town is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think we might need state legislative approval to set up a fund like that. It's possible, but if I could ask a question, in terms of these improvements that you discussed, could you prioritize them in terms of which are the most important for you, for your development now?
Okay, so to help the existing situation is the turn lane on Underhill. That would be, in terms of this overall plan.
You're talking about the left turn lane.
Left turn lane. So the key, I think, about, the problem usually is, like, for example, there's a plan for the middle of town of what can be done there. But right-of-way is needed, which is the major, undertaking, permits from the state, and a final design. There's only a conceptual design. So there's a lot of impediments to that occurring. Some of the land dedication along Crown Pond Road has been completed with the Wyant development. That has progressed. It's almost to the point of completion with DOT. So that piece will be in place. At this intersection, one of the advantages is this applicant controls two sides of the road. The town controls the third. And the fourth side, we probably would avoid because there's a lot of utilities in there. There may be some work, but there is some right-of-way. So you have an applicant that controls much of the land that's needed. As I stated, we would design for your master plan. If the town said, you know what, we can't figure out this funding yet, but let's do phase one, but we have the full design, so we can get that done while we're getting the funding for the next phase. And if no other development comes along, then you have something that functions.
Phase one is the $800,000 plan.
Yeah. So
Phase one is the 800?
no.
Well, not really.
What I'm talking about in terms of the true phase one is the signal upgrades, the adaptive. Yeah. So that would be phase one. But in terms of the intersection reconstruction, that first part of the reconstruction could be done at the 800,000 number.
But the full board, the true fix.
Yeah. But you would design it for the full fix.
And I'm just almost 33 years in public service. We have an opportunity. We've asked an applicant to come up with a solution. And there is, because of the property, the people that control the properties, you have a real solution here. And isn't it a solution for just this? It's a solution for true planning, for everything coming down the pike, so that when these other projects come in, there's been something put in place to assist that, so that we could work on the other problems we're going to have as these developments come in. And again, I think you got an opportunity. I think we've asked the applicant to do something. It looks like they took us seriously. They put a lot of work into this. I just think we got to regroup maybe with the town board, engineering department. I know Dan's floating around somewhere, and come up with a plan on how to get this done. And unless I'm mistaken, if the town was the applicant on this project, all the utility companies would have to do the work on the arm.
That's correct. So that would be
That would
some
be a
savings.
huge help. Where if the applicant did the project, what do you estimate the cost to do all the utility work
I
would be?
forget what the breakdown was, but it was over $100,000 of utility pole relocations, et cetera. Not talking about sewer or.
If the town takes this on, you're going to save real money with the utility work. You're going to get, with the second one, you're going to get a real fix, not just for this development, but for the town.
Can they do
And that intersection is, but, so, So the $800,000 number, does it include the town as the agency, or
Yeah.
with the $100,000 thing that he just described? So that's already baked into the.
So the 150,000, the utilities come into the 1.5 million improvement, because under the first plan, most of the utility poles that we're dealing with are on the south side of Underhill. The widening is being done on the north side of Underhill. It's along 118 where you have utility pole relocations and other things that what the chairman's talking about is if it's a town project, they have to be relocated. Okay.
And that's the one with the through lane and the left turn.
Correct. Correct.
And so on the $800,000 project,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we're focused on right now, right? On the $800,000 project, is there any land dedication that has to happen from the applicant?
Yes.
And that's not included, that's just.
That would
just
be,
going to
yeah.
be-
So, yeah, that would be part of the work along Underhill Avenue to get that done. On this second plan, the 118, that would be something that'd have to be worked out because it's a different, the owner has control, but it's a different entity. So there would be some, arrangements that would have to be done. But that may only be easements for grading. It may not even be a taking. You follow me?
Your site plan approval will include the road widening dedications as a matter of course.
That's
right?
correct.
Right.
On this property,
Right.
yes.
It will also include the improvements for the 100,000 or so dollars, which
Absolutely.
include the timing, the video camera, the RFB,
Yep.
and
Whatever
it
the
will,
police department wants in terms of
Yes.
help with speed controls
and it includes, as of right now, as we speak, the $450,000
correct.
donation towards the intersection improvement,
Yes.
whatever it is, 800 or
Correct.
right. That's where we're at.
So am I to understand that no matter what plan we pick, the applicant is still going to be on the hook for 450,000?
Yes.
So we could go for $1.5 million, he still goes for 450,000.
Correct. That's the proposal.
$1.5 million
Correct.
encompasses what anybody is going to want to do in the area.
Yes.
Down the road.
Right, so wouldn't it behoove us to
Yes.
approve something like that?
And wouldn't it
Why
also?
go half-baked?
You just got to find the funding.
That's just it.
Well,
The thing now is if you listen to the doctor, and this is what the man does.
Yeah.
There's state funding, there's ways to,
regardless, but as long as the plan is in place,
That's-
the big number.
yes.
But the other
He's
thing
only
you
going
gotta
to
get
spring for
straightened out
450.
too is
It
the
could take 10
land.
years to finish
No,
it,
you
but we're
wanna-
done.
But you want, but yes, and when you have these other developments come in,
They're going to come in too, you know that.
right? And I think everybody hopes that we see redevelopment down there.
I don't see why we can't approve something.
Well,
Where's the other 350 come from?
well, that's what we have, and that's why I think it's gotta be, we gotta get serious about this.
So now they
What
indicated
did
that
you
the
say?
applicant would be able,
Plan, the minimum
would be
plan's
willing to.
Yeah, but
front
he's dumping
the
450 in it. So
Where's the other
350,
350?
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
'Cause I think that's what I heard. The applicant would would be willing to front the 350, in lieu at some point of being paid back, whether another project comes into town and they make their contribution or something to that effect. How long would the applicant be willing to wait to be paid back?
Oh, I don't know.
That's the question.
I don't know. I mean, those are numbers. I think the bottom line is this applicant is here to work with the town, okay? And I think if the concept is acceptable, the details can be worked out. That's just my feeling. I've done this, in other places, and I think you have a willing
The
applicant.
last few projects that you worked on, big projects, if you could just give us a sample of what other kind of work you've done recently.
In the town?
No.
Well, we just finished Legoland,
Okay?
$500 million project in Orange County.
Yep.
$40 million $48 million of off-site road improvements, new interchange. We're doing, it's almost finished now, but the first phase is Hudson Heritage, which is the redevelopment of the Hudson River Psychiatric Center in Poughkeepsie, up near the border with Hyde Park. All the off-site improvements, intersection upgrades, signal upgrades. One project that was just finished that involved ASNY funding is in the town of Southeast on Route 6, an intersection improvement, which was over $1 million improvement for providing turn lanes and reconstruction. Yeah, the list goes on and on.
And most of your work has dealings with the state of New York DOT?
Yes.
And
Permitting with New York State DOT and dealing with the contractors, utility companies, et cetera.
so you got a pretty good sense on what they like to see?
Yes.
And what they'll approve.
Yeah. You know, because people may look and say, well, how could it cost so much to do?
Right. Well,
It
especially
costs a
today.
lot because your ADA compliance, your current standards in terms of equipment, in terms of pavement sections, you know, what's there today has to be brought up to current standards.
There's no way around that.
I mean, I may go a little detail here. Did I hear you say earlier that you're anticipating 30 cars would travel through Beaver Ridge through that access road?
Total, both directions.
And so what impact does, I presume they come in and off of Allen Avenue?
I'm sorry?
Off of
Yes,
Allen.
yes. But
What impact? for
most
Allen
of
and-
most of those trips though would be, you know, going towards Kear Street and out that way, because there's no real advantage from going through there to get out to Allen to get anywhere else.
You don't wanna
You-
create
you're
a
not-
cut
you-
through.
when you can come out of this project, if you're heading towards the Taconic, for example, you're going to come out of this project onto Underhill, make a right turn, you're going to go right down to Taconic. So there's no advantage to go out Allen Avenue the other way.
You're
So
not-
really going out to Allen to get to the signal at Kear Street, because if I'm going across to the Shell station, let's say, to get gas, well, then I come out of Beaver Ridge and make a right turn to go straight across to the Shell station. Or if I want to go to Gramercy, or if I want to go, you know.
What a boon to the town.
All right.
You get design.
And this
And,
may be-
and the layout is such that it's going to be traffic calmed. We have some speed tables, signing, and it's not like it's a straight through road. You know, for example, in front of Kmart today, you have a straight shot, so you're going to fly through there. This is laid out so that it would be vehicular use, but pedestrian friendly with sidewalk connections. So
And that this may be more of a site plan question, but it's kind of, so how do the pedestrians get to these crosswalks? So where are the sidewalks that are taking people from the
Okay,
the
so-
property into the, you know,
So in the initial plan, you have the sidewalk on the south side of Underhill. So the reason why we're putting in the RRFB is for pedestrians to cross to that sidewalk and then across the existing sidewalk network, crossing 118. So along the south side, there's an existing pedestrian crossing here today. The other three legs of that pedestrian crossing don't exist. Once that plan was put into effect, where the gates are, there could be a pedestrian connection to that corner. Right in the beginning, we don't want that connection because there's no control for pedestrians there. But that's how it would all tie together, and anybody walking, you know, from, you know, Caremount, let's say, could come across there and then walk right into the project.
Okay.
So again, it's kind of a phased approach.
John, if you have a hamlet, right? Part of the whole hamlet feel and the way it's supposed to work is you have different uses that people are able to walk to without the use of a vehicle. So here you have town hall, there's a bunch of restaurants, there's even if it doesn't happen, there's a proposed senior center that the town is talking about. You have the new development, you have bike paths, you got the school up the street, there's everything in this area, churches. That's part of the goal here, is to get that walkability, right? We keep talking about even this proposed hotel that came in, where there'd be shared parking with the different areas, because you got seas of asphalt in some of these areas here that are just go unused. So, and I know Aaron was very concerned about, you know, getting through to the other side, opposite side of Caremount. So I think that's something we really got to take seriously here too.
I just want to echo those comments, because I'm listening to the traffic. Seems to me what we're doing is we're taking individual pieces of this project apart from the project itself, you're looking at the impacts as if this is what's going to end up on the ground here. And the things that Rich is talking about, the things that I was talking about before, is this the project layout and design and density that we want to go forward with? I believe under the overlay district, we have a range to work with, don't we?
Under the overlay district?
If the overlay district allows us to depart from the traditional zoning that otherwise would have been in place, and it gives us a great more flexibility and things to deal with. But isn't there an acceptable range that we can work with?
Of unit counts, you mean?
Of unit counts, of density, of all kinds of things.
The
that
unit,
would-
unit count and density, you have up to 0.55 FAR to work with.
And this project is at what?
0.50, I think. 0.5.
And on the other side, that's the maximum. Is there, is there a minimum?
No,
Okay,
there's not a minimum.
there's no minimum,
There's
so
no minimum.
somewhere in there, that we can end up with a range that,
Yeah, you know, the R3 is between 9 and 12 units per acre,
right.
depending on certain aspects of the property.
I got a crazy question for you. I don't need an answer tonight, but is there any scenario that the applicant would consider covering the cost of the 1.5, getting that whole intersection done? You don't have to answer me now, but
Well,
maybe that might be.
we'll get an answer for you, but typically it is done by either an additional density bonus, okay? In other projects, that's what's happened to get certain improvements done at a next level. So, this improvement here is going to accommodate other development. So maybe the development some of it occurs on this site. If you remember, this project started at 165 units, went down to 148. So maybe we go back up to 165 units. I'm just telling you, I don't know what the applicant's feeling is on this, but typically how you would go about doing it would be, all right, you're going to give us this benefit. Well, it's something that would have to be looked at.
I think we should move on with the big number.
All right.
One last thing I know there was some discussion at the last meeting about pedestrian access out onto 118 on the project side. We're limited to come out either at Underhill or Kear Street. When this whole frontage along 118 is what's called without access. That means without access for anyone, vehicles or pedestrians.
What do you mean by pedestrian access, then?
It's legally, you are not permitted to have a pedestrian crossing of that line or a vehicle crossing of that line to access the state highway.
But is there any way that,
And how rigid is that requirement, given the fact that we're talking about an overlay zone that's,
Yeah.
we're trying to pull the town together?
Well, first of all, you're not going to put a sidewalk on that side of 118. Because then you're going to have to remove the entire stone wall. You're going to have to grade back into the property. So the DOT doesn't really want to have, they want it at the controlled intersections where pedestrians would be crossing.
but right now you
Let's
have the
just-
pedestrian through Beaver Ridge
Yeah.
using the existing sidewalk network that's there.
Correct.
Isn't there a way, again, people like straight lines when they're walking typically, right? So isn't there a way to take the foot traffic from the development and take it through the Beaver Ridge property, but
Yeah.
to the corner of Kear and 118?
Yes, because Allen Avenue has access to the state highway right of way. But from that, there's a point there. From there down to Underhill, there's an area that's without what they call without access.
Right.
So the answer is yes, you could, instead of winding through the sidewalk system, you could, get a sidewalk, but you'd have to be on their property. You
Right.
can't be in the state right
Either
of way.
way. Either way, you're
so-
suggesting that pedestrians would,
Yes.
So the without access is all along 118, is that what you're saying?
so no
And that-
Along
driveway
the,
cut?
along the frontage of 118, except at Underhill Avenue.
Except at the intersections for the
And
most part, yeah.
yes.
So,
No new driveway cuts,
and no,
Correct.
and no new sidewalks?
no, no
Because,
crossing.
because
you
we
would-
did build a sidewalk.
There's a sidewalk that was built on the other side of 118.
Right.
But if you look at the mapping here, when that was done,
Yeah.
there was a change in the mapping there. There's no driveways allowed, but the mapping was changed. Along this side of 118 is totally without access for any type of access,
Okay,
But
well-
is it-
except
but
at the
it-
intersection.
Okay.
It's
Are you saying
it's
isn't access, you're saying is a driveway cut or a crossing lane?
Correct.
But parallel to the road, you can't have a sidewalk like we have?
if you, as long as you're not in the state right of way.
Okay.
Do you know what the purpose of that is? Because it doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose related to pedestrian traffic, to me. Unless there's something that they,
It's just the way that it's the way that the property was taken.
okay,
And
I don't want to belabor the point.
yeah, it was just a point because I know there was a question about, well, maybe we should have a pedestrian connection out from the property at that
It
point.
raises another issue, though, that I did talk about a couple of weeks ago, and that's what you've got facing 118 is all parking. Right?
Right, but it's up at a different elevation than 118.
Well,
first of all,
I mean, I'm not sure that for me personally, I'd like to get away from sites that have parking, street then parking and then buildings. I would rather have the parking inside the site and have the buildings out towards the edge so that they can integrate. And isn't it possible then if you can put your sidewalk where the parking is, put your buildings over there and then move your parking into the middle of the site somewhere?
yeah, on the site
you're
itself.
gonna
You're
block-
saying on the site.
What's
yeah.
that?
I mean, right now, the elevation is, you go,
Yeah.
I mean, it's across the street. So you see.
Yeah, I know.
You see the stone wall, you see the parking, but then you see the mansion, the Underhill Mansion.
Well,
So if you put buildings in front of that, you won't see the
well,
mansion.
you can put the building behind it. Move it over. You don't have to come towards Underhill. You can come towards 118 and put the parking around somewhere else. But I've talked about this, but I haven't seen any alternative or any reason why, we shouldn't consider this. We're getting into parking details. That's what I was saying before, but we're not looking at the whole site. And maybe these potential things exist. Joe, I don't know. Even conceptually, you can block out something. I don't know. I'm not asking you to spend, a lot of money in doing, 20 plans. But
So where were we?
it's a thought.
Where are we now?
Hmm?
Where are we?
Oh, we're just,
I mean,
We've gone through traffic.
We want to give the applicants some
Well,
direction.
I think there's still a lot to look at. So I know we have another presentation tonight.
so we'll try to get through that quickly.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always very helpful.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We just advertised, I think we just went out for lead agency, am I right, on this? So we're still waiting for that to come back.
It might
Yeah.
take a minute to load at the time.
Came back.
Okay. And we got the county put some stuff in on this, didn't they?
Good
Hello.
evening.
How are you?
Nice to see you all again. For the record, Beth Seelig, Hudson Cultural Services. If the board's amenable, I know we're getting late in the evening, but I gave you a whole bunch of information last week. Took about 20 months worth of work and condensed it down into a real fast presentation for you. I'd like to take some time today and walk you through very briefly the history of the property, what structures are on the property and their evolution, show you a bunch of pictures of these buildings, and then along the way answer any questions you may have about the specific buildings, about the specific things that we're talking about. Sure, that's fine. I did bring some handouts that might help in the sense that it's a map that includes the layout of the buildings and then just a brief definition of what those buildings are, if you'd like me to
Sure.
pass them along, just
Thank
to
you.
kind of help keep everybody clear.
Yep. Building is on site.
This here.
Take one.
So this,
Yes, please.
I'll just wait till y'all get around.
Sergio.
If we need more, I've got a few more.
No, you weren't. You were studying the picture.
Doesn't matter, I can just show them. Okay. So-
I know.
The image I put up on the screen is an 1886 lithographic image of the Edward B. Underhill estate. It was taken from Sharp's History of Westchester County, and you can see just by the layout of the stone walls and the driveway that there's been a little bit of artistic license. This is not a full-scale survey drawing, and there's also been presumably some artistic drawing license taken with the buildings in the back, but you can see that on the original 19th century estate, there were quite a number of barns, quite a number of buildings. And I don't know why it shows a big, huge pond over here where we are standing now, but there's nothing in any record I have that shows that this was once a large pond. So the Floral Villa estate was originally built in 1828. It was expanded on, this is the White Mansion House we're talking about, it was expanded on over the years and completed in 1886. That's the eastern portion of the house by the Abraham and Edward Underhill family. In 1907, the farm was purchased from the Keers by the Beaver family. They operated a rather large dairy on the farm initially. They ran the property as a dairy farm. And then after Anna passed away, Gilbert established the Beaver Conference Center on the property. That operated until the late, 1980s. When Gilbert Beaver died, the property was deeded to his daughter, in part to his daughter, but the other part of it was deeded to the Conference Farm organization. So even though Gilbert Beaver had passed away, the organization still operated. And it was operated by Reverend Schuyler, Barbara Rhodes, and in 1989 through 2020, Soundview School operated here on the property. So again, very quick, brief summary here. This is a sort of zoom in of the 1979 subdivision plat for when the apartment parcel was subdivided off the farm. I took this out of the Westchester County Historic Records, and it shows the buildings that were on the property at the time. For the purposes of just maintaining our sanity throughout the discussion of all our historical reports, we went through and labeled them based on the identification that the Soundview School used for the building. So this follows the same labels, Building B, Building I, that the Soundview School had on the property. And you have a sheet in front of you that lists them all, with Building A being the mansion, and then there's a couple in there, Building F and Building D, which have long since been demolished. This is a 1941 aerial, and what I put, it's not the best clarity, it's I think 24,000 feet in elevation, but what I wanted to point out is north of the pond, the top of the pond, you can see a couple of small structures, which is where the chapel and the little carriage barn would be, but north of that you have two really long, large barns. Those barns were presumably the dairy barns that are later demolished. They have been removed from the property. You can see that it's fairly well overgrown, but the pond is certainly a focal point just to the west of the mansion. Fast forward a little bit to 1964, and you can see some of the demolition happening where you see the exposed foundations of the barns up there towards the top. And then you fast forward to 2018, where those long, low barns are completely removed. Also removed was a small little wood structure that's just to the north of the chapel and that carriage barn, which would be buildings G and H on your little map. So this is the mansion. This is what we see from the road. This was constructed over a period of 60 years.
If you're looking at the photograph on the top left corner, the long low period is the long low portion on the porch. That's part of the earlier portion of the building, the Federalist period style piece. And then the western side, or to the right, the more square section was built later. It was added onto. The picture in the top right corner that's got the Toyota in front of it, you can see right behind it.
Can I
Yes.
ask you, the second portion of the building, do you know when that was constructed?
The later part was between the 1860s and 1880s. Underhill was was harvesting stone from one of his quarries, and he used that in the foundation. So behind the Toyota in that picture there is a much later addition that was either added at the end of the Gilbert Conference Farms tenure or during the Soundview's tenure. The other side, you can see in the back of the building, you can see part of a root cellar, and you can just see some of the elevations and little additions that have been added to the back of the mansion during the Conference Farms period on the property. This is a sample of some of the images that we took on the younger portion of the mansion. So that eastern side, the square piece, has really beautiful, intricate woodwork. The original stone mantles are still in place. The original flooring is still in place. You can see a lot of the detail on the walls and in the archways of the doorways. And here's just a couple other views. Over the stairway and the ceilings, you have lots of beautiful decorative plasters that are still in place. This is one of the most compelling reasons that Mr. Galero wants to save the building, is because it's in wonderful condition and it really is spectacular and it's stunning. These are some images of the older portion of the building. You can see where, that there have been some significant changes, and it's a lot of that historic detail has been lost. I can't tell you specifically, who, if it was Soundview Farm, or Soundview School, if it was the farm conference center who who made the changes, but there's definitely been some serious change. And then the picture on the lower left is a photo of the inside of the Belvedere. That's that small tower on top of the roof. And you can see that the interior is largely unfinished. It doesn't have a plaster wall. It doesn't, it's just exposed brick and studs. This is the basement of the eastern side of the house, the younger portion of the house. And you can see these huge blocks of cut stone make up the foundation. And this is some of the stone that was quarried in Underhill's other properties and brought in. The tunnel that we see in the upper left-hand corner is actually, it served two purposes. It was an access point for back-of-the-house operations. So all of, your deliveries, servants coming in and out, it served as an access point for that. But it primarily served as a root cellar and food storage. You think prior to 1913, nobody had refrigerators. So somebody had to keep food cool and dry. So that was one of the methodologies. And as you get close to that particular door, you can actually see some of the old meat hooks still hanging on the wall. Moving around the property a little bit, this is Building B. This is right behind this is on the road that kind of goes out behind the mansion. The Soundview School used it as classroom. Historically, it probably served as a root cellar, summer storage, summer kitchen. The basement is wood frame around a field stone. And in the lower right-hand corner, you can see a sort of a blow-up picture of, someone took a bunch of boards and shimmed up on the load-bearing wall under the floor, which suggests to me that we might have some structural deficiencies happening, in the building.
You have date on it?
This one, based on the fieldstone foundation, I would believe that this dates to the mid-19th century. So this would have been during Underhill's tenure on the property. It has been substantially modified on the second story. You can see in the upper right, there's, that's a classroom. It's got sheetrock walls, electric lighting. It's been, a lot of the historic integrity on this has been lost just due to the changes over time. So this would be the small little barn, building G, that's on the northern side of the pond. This has been many things over the years. Based on the wood beam construction, the post and beam, this would date to Underhill's tenure initially. You can see in the lower left that there's been lots of modifications to the barn. That's also visible in the exterior. You can see that there have been modifications to the openings, things have changed, things have moved around. The interior does not appear to be particularly weatherproof, and there's certainly no heating or cooling or any sort of HVAC system in it because it's always been a barn.
This is building G.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. To renovate something like this, to bring it into some form of adaptive reuse, to turn it into a usable building, because buildings should be usable, the amount of work that would need to be done would ultimately result in a loss of the historic integrity. You would have to, get everything level. You'd have to make changes to the exterior, and that work would cause a significant loss in the historic exterior of the building.
You think this is mid-18th century as well?
This one, yes, based on the post and beam. This is the chapel. So on our little schematic, we've identified it as Building H. Based on the dimensional lumber that's being used, so standardized lumber sizes or standard 2x4 didn't actually come into play until the 1920s. It was a post-World War invention brought about due to significant lumber shortages. So prior to that time, lumber was milled locally. And so if you were building something, you went over to the mill, you told them what they need, they cut it for you, you brought it to your property, you built your structure. So up until post-World War I, we didn't have standardized lumber. So the fact that this is built with standardized lumber tells me that this was constructed during the Beaver Conference Farm tenure on the property. The structure features a wood frame foundation that's been built into the hill, and you can see in that lower left picture that someone put sheetrock over those exposed beams that are built right up against the dirt hillside. Also the windows are very diagnostic when you're looking at buildings, looking at the type of windows there. It's going to tell you a lot about what's happened to a building. Those windows are definitely mid-20th century. There was a record, a note that I saw in doing my research. There's someone posited that this was used as an ice house by the Underhills. And this type of structure would not have served as an ice house. Ice houses were generally built subterranean, below grade, again, for that cooling and refrigeration process. And they would have had a stone or a brick foundation, again, to keep everything cool and to keep things refrigerated. Having this foundation is actually exposed on three sides. The lower level is exposed on three sides. So having a wood frame structure that's exposed to the elements with no insulation would not have worked as an ice house. As we move around the property, we go to Building I, which was the Soundview School Playhouse. I did see a note that the pews were originally in the chapel, but the Soundview School brought them over. This building it's hard to tell if it dates to Underhill's tenure because it's been substantially modified. It does feature post and beam construction. You can see the beams in the picture, but they have 2x6s built into them. So either they were beams that were repurposed or this was a barn that was substantially rehabilitated in the mid-20th century to make it into whatever the conference farm used it for. The windows are also mid-20th century, as is the paneling and the brick fireplace around. And so based on the current style, that this was all the work on this was primarily done by the folks for the Beaver Conference Farm. And then Building J, this is located sort of northwest of the pond. This dates to the mid-20th century, again, based on standardized lumber styles, based on the exterior window styles. This is a building that I did not walk through. because I was cautioned against safety hazards. The windows have all been broken. It's open to the elements. There may or may not have been animals living in it. My understanding is that its recent use for the Soundview School was primarily storage. So it may have just been where they stuck things that they didn't need right away. It features, from what I could see, painted brick foundation. You can see on that white wall all the way in the back on that upper right photo that it does have a white brick wall in the middle, and it does have standardized lumber for its construction. This here is Building C. It was most recently used, I believe, as the science building. On one of those previous aerials I had showed you this, if you're looking at the picture in the upper left, the barn actually extended further to the west. It was a much larger barn. It could have been a horse stable, but it may have primarily been for cows. It might have been a long, low dairy barn. My research indicates that the exterior of the building was substantially rehabilitated most recently in 2016. The windows have all been replaced with modern inserts, especially on the first floor. The exterior siding has all been removed. All the old barnwood has been removed, and we now have some hardy board and what looks to be clapboard siding. The lower level of the interior, again, it's been completely renovated. The upper levels were first renovated by the Beaver Conference Farm and then by Soundview School. Because of all the changes, I can't, without taking the walls apart, I don't know what the original construction was. It could have been an original barn for Underhill, but most likely this was built during the Beaver Conference period. But what I wanted to point out is sort of the loss of the historic integrity. If you're looking at this building outside the context of this property, I don't think barn would be the first thing that would come to mind. The color's kind of a dead giveaway, but if it was a different color, that might not be the first thing that comes to mind. This building has lost its historic function, and it has experienced so many changes that it's lost its historic integrity as a 19th century barn. And this is one of the principal things that we don't want to have happen when we're doing historic preservation or adaptive reuse, is we want to retain as much historic integrity as we can. And that's why when I've brought up structural issues, it's not that it's and anything, you talk to a contractor's going to tell you anything can get fixed. Doesn't matter, you can fix it. It's just how much money is it going to cost? And so when you talk about structural deficiencies and load bearing, that's just driving the cost of converting a building to have a purpose higher and higher and higher. And then that purpose, what are you going to use the building for? A lot of these barns, a lot of these structures don't have heating and cooling. They have electricity. So when you add all those factors in, you lose more and more, not only of the historic character, but also its historic function. And so that's the one thing when it comes to should we save the building, should we use it, is A, is it financially practical and prudent? And B, can we adaptively reuse it and retain its historic integrity and its historic function? And I have one more slide, and then I'll answer any questions you may have. This is actually I have two more slides. This is the small little residential house that's up on the far northeastern corner of the property. It would be actually I don't think it's on this little plan. No, it is, it's building C, I apologize. This one served as the middle school building for Soundview. It was built in the 1940s and has been recently converted into a residential structure, residential apartments. Just to give you a few more, complete the visual walkthrough, this is the pond. It does have a masonry border around the northern side. There is a small bridge that goes across of it. Based on the construction material, Soundview rebuilt that bridge or added that bridge during their tenure. And you can see that, currently on the side of the main drive, it's got some very wonderful park-like qualities. And then the stone walls that Dr. Greeley was talking about, They're still there. We have several main gates. The lower left-hand side, you can see looking down into that main intersection, and then just a couple other access points along the roadway.
How old do you think the walls are, if you're the age?
They would be late 19th century. The stone in the walls actually in cut and type match the stone in the the eastern side of that foundation.
And if you look across the street, there's a wall there. Did you see that? On
All the
opposite-
way down sort of where on this property is?
It's on the opposite side.
Oh.
It's, I don't know how
I
far
might not
away.
have a picture of it here.
What picture are you looking at?
No, I just know I drove it,
Oh.
and there's a wall on the opposite side of the street that looks interesting.
Yeah, there was a lot of stone here on this property. The historic record indicates that it was so stony he couldn't plow it, and it was so wet he couldn't do anything to it until he drained it, which was why the pond was built. Livestock needs water. If you're running a big dairy farm, you need a ton of water. So again, the pond would have served as livestock. There was, he did put a lot of work into the property. Now, he owned hundreds of acres, and he had many enterprises, Underhill did, here in town. He had mills, he had quarries, he had all sorts of other businesses. So, that aspect is definitely reflected in the wealth of the property, but he would have used that stone to, he's quarrying the stone, he would have used it for everything. And he, his holdings extended much, out further out. Even the Beaver Conference Farm was much larger than this 13-acre parcel today. It's been sold off and broken up. Underhill owned, he was a Quaker, and he owned many, plots in the town. And some of those, when he died, he left to, the Friends Society, he left to family members, he left to folks who worked for him. So there's a lot going on.
Very, very interesting.
And there was a train that came up here.
Yeah.
Can you explain the relationship, what role does New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation play in this process?
So because there's a DEC permit on the project for the wetlands, the applicant cannot get his DEC permit until there has been a review and sign off by the SHPO. So that's role number one. Any person who has a DEC permit has to have review and sign off by the SHPO. That's, part number one. The other part too is this, because it's been declared eligible by the SHPO, it does come under the historic and cultural resources in the seeker review.
And where is that review? What stage is that under? I saw there's a letter of resolution that's being circulated. Has that been entered into yet?
It has not, and this is something that I need to continue having conversations with the project council on, because the SHPO has opted to not execute it until seeker closes, but that may become problematic in the sense that a lot of the things that are outlaid as mitigation steps in the letter of resolution happen as part of the seeker process. So as part of your site plan approval, your site plan conditions. So that's something that we need to resolve with the SHPO.
So what's
Generally speaking, they close out and then we move into seeker.
So what's the plan for these? Is there any plan to salvage or reuse or donate parts or all of these buildings?
Yes. So the big White House, the mansion, is going to be saved. That's going to be $1 million plus is going to go into that to make it purposeful and to keep it and retain it. The remaining buildings on the property are currently planned to be removed. However, as part of the mitigation steps in the letter of resolution, we have to offer them for salvage to a historic salvage company so that they could reuse the reclaimed barnwood or other pieces in their project. We also have to offer them to any interested entity, such as a historical society or a preservation group, if they want to take them and move them off the property or move them to a different property, disassemble them, what have you. There's a couple of steps along those lines. And one of the things we have to do, before any changes happen to the property is do a state level documentation packet, where we go in and thoroughly document every building, every aspect of it before anything is irrevocably, destroyed.
We have a historic preservation commission here in town. Have you been in contact with?
I have not.
Okay. You may.
I'm aware that they have been in contact with the SHPO, and I have been given correspondence via the SHPO about.
That's still open, in other words. What's going to happen to those buildings, and if they get donated or anything, they're going to be removed under your plan, right?
Right.
From the site, but not necessarily just destroyed and carted away in
Correct.
trash.
Correct. Yes.
And that's still under.
That's still ongoing. Yes.
I think that has to be closed out through this process to a certain degree.
understand.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think we
I've-
talked about that at the last meeting too, like
Yeah.
your park, right?
Right.
Maybe there's something that can go down there. I know in Nordcastle, there's a whole parcel where they've taken and rebuilt buildings that are historic.
Yeah. Well, I've suggested that the chapel possibly be moved on site to be potentially used in whatever way, because I think it might augment, this development with the pond and the walking trails and so on and so forth. That I think they're going to look into it, but that would leave.
Our process.
Right, but all of this is part of your process. So.
Okay.
And I also think that the contents of the letter of resolution may be worthwhile for this board to see
Okay.
at some points within this process, so they have an understanding of what is in the head of the SHPO folks.
Sure.
Even though
Yes.
they may not be signing it until later, which I think you'll
Right.
continue to.
That was an unusual step in the typical process.
How unusual.
It's never happened before, in my experience. In my experience, the response I got from the director when I inquired as to why that was the process going, and she said that she understood that there was a seeker review, and she wanted to make certain that the public had an opportunity to be heard.
Okay.
And I agree with Darren. I think they've reached out to Robin, the historical group, Lynn.
Well, a seeker process, let's just say, is what guarantees all of that
Right.
public input regardless, which you
Yeah.
guys do, I think, very well in every development. So that will happen as a matter of course,
Okay.
not to mention that, the typical state laws regarding, your board. So,
And there's a couple other steps in that LOR that include, maintaining the existing trees that are, that don't have to come down for safety reasons or because they're dying, and if they have to come down, they'll be replaced, and all that's going to be worked out with the conservation group, in Yorktown that's responsible for that. We're saving the stone walls, the paths are going to be saved, the pond's going to be rehabilitated and brought back to a very park-like setting. So there's a lot of stuff in there that pertains to, retaining certain aspects of the property as it exists.
and it seems counterintuitive that it happens outside or post-secret process to my view, so.
Can you go back to that first picture you had, the artistic rendering, you said?
Oh,
where it
sure.
took liberties?
Oh, with the pond in the front
Yes.
there.
When the councilman said we should turn the town hall back into a pond.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah.
That's the Hudson River School of Painting.
See, look how
There you
it
go.
So, when you talk about historic integrity and going back, would the landscape there, do you think that would be kind of the way it looked, or they just?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, like I said, there's been a certain amount of artistic license, but what you have there, if we were to take all those trees, those giant trees that are there and knock them down, I think it would open everything up more. Not that anybody wants to do that, but if you take the trees out of the visual, because they screen so much of it from the roadway. And even when I actually climbed up the fire escape, and even when you're standing on the fire escape looking out, the trees are screening so much of the property that you can't see all the stone walls that are there, all those curvilinear paths that go around. And when Soundview put their pads in and when they put their parking lot in, they did actually follow a lot of that old pattern. So a lot of that flow through the property is still there. The gate is very similar, as you can see here in the picture, to the one that's there now at the corner of Underhill. There are a lot. The building placement, again, there have been so many buildings that came down in the mid 20th century that it's hard to say if you could have seen a big, huge barn from this angle right behind the mansion, because that barn was taken down in the 60s.
But what you see there, like the gate in the front, in moving forward with the preservation of this property, is that something that the landscaping and these little features that you think could be restored as a part of that project?
Yeah, the gate is there now,
Right,
so
but I
it's
mean,
just
the
like
fine-tuning
Yeah,
of that.
redoing some of the landscaping,
Yeah.
improving the vegetation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Back to what
speak.
it wa- right.
I'm not going to speak for him, but I think
But if it
certainly
was-
you
If
could.
it was something that, they're spending $1 million fixing up the old home, is there work that could be done outside to the
Mm-hmm.
wall, to the ice houses, and to these other features that could really,
Right.
especially in the front, as you're pulling up the road, looking at it,
Right.
that could really bring you back to,
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be the size of the trees. And I think that's the biggest. You have extremely mature pine trees there, and I think they just both vertically and horizontally create such coverage that
they overpower.
they overpower it.
Yeah.
And you can't, and so you don't really get the feel of the property until you're all the way in.
Right.
It's very enclosed. It's very inclusive right now.
But if you went back to when it was built and the original intent, not that we're looking to take down all these mature trees.
No.
But you think there's a way to get back to that?
I think it's still there. I just think you can't see it.
Okay.
You can't see it as clearly. And I know you were speaking before about connecting to the
Yeah.
apartments and stuff. All these pathways just lead. Once you're in the property, they all kind of lead out. So that's having that pedestrian walkways through the property is. A lot of that flow is certainly there on the landscape. Especially because this was once a much larger piece of property. It was once a much larger farm. I don't know exactly how many acres Underhill had here, but hundreds, not just 13.
It's also interesting, you pointed out, I think more than once, when you guys did your dig,
Mm-hmm.
and when you were talking about the history of the property, especially with the use of the animals, that it's very wet and a lot of rock.
Yep. And what we found when we were doing the archaeological survey is that there's just been a lot of soil movement throughout the property due to the changing over time.
Yeah.
Putting in infrastructure, putting in parking lots, you move the soil around, you change things. And we can see that in the soil profiles. There's been a lot of change that's happened to the landscape there over time.
I got to tell you, out of all the presentations I've seen over the years doing this stuff, this was very enjoyable. I love the history stuff.
Well,
Really.
I wanted to sort of get you to a place where you felt comfortable
No, I think
understanding what was going on in the
You
property.
did a great job. I want to hear more about Underhill. Sounds like you own half the town.
He did.
That's crazy.
He has quite a genealogy and quite a history,
Really?
and certainly was a
Like
significant.
the
member.
local cemeteries in the area, they probably have family members, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very
I know he was a member. He was a Quaker, so he was a member of the Friends Meeting House. So they're.
In Amawak? One in Amawak?
I don't know if he's in Amawak or not, but he was here locally. He donated land for the meeting house. He made sure to bequeath them. Like I read his will this morning. They made sure to
Really?
bequeath things in his will. So he had a lot going on.
And when did he pass?
I believe it was in 1886. It could have been a little bit later in 89.
I thought this was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure the Historical Society is going to want to see it at some point.
I'm sure.
Perfectly well.
Thank you.
Oops.
So,
Is that Joe's
Yeah.
computer? Again? Oh, it's a toilet flush.
it's actually not a toilet flush. So, our next presentation is going to be mainly Steve Marino. He's going to talk about the environmental, tree mitigation, etc. And you're also going to get a presentation on the fiscal impacts of the project. I'm going to be doing that at the next meeting. We see no reason, and we would like the board to schedule a PIH. I mean, if we're going to plan this project and move this project forward, you should get the public input starting to move along. And I think a PIH, in my mind, would be in order at this point. In the overlay district, the process is supposed to be an expedited process, so we need to kind of work together and moving things along. I know there's a lot of information. It's a big project. And there's a lot to tangle with, but getting that PIH, I think, is a good step forward by by the town at this point.
I'm gonna look to John to see
Well, the PIH is supposed to get the
involvement.
fact that there is a project on this project out to the public sooner than later, so.
So we
I
want to do it in
think
June?
it's
Can we
fine.
do it in June?
Yeah, June, you can do June.
Why don't we,
gotta move venues? Is it big enough here, you think? Or are you gonna have,
No, I think so.
you think so? Not gonna be another Costco or?
No, I don't.
you can hook June, right?
Yeah,
you go.
that's fine. First meeting in June, and then at the next meeting, like I said, we'll do the environmental presentation.
Well, is
All
there a
right.
next meeting?
May
May,
23rd.
oh, May 23rd,
Soon.
okay.
Okay.
Did they, I'm just
I have a
curious.
question before you go.
Yeah.
There's a memo in the file from Westchester County
Yes.
dated back in February, which talks about some of the things that I was talking about in terms of parking. What's the front yard of this site?
Both 2 front yards.
There's 2 front yards.
Right.
Okay. So they talk about some waiver being required. I'd like you to address that, not necessarily tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'd like you to address their concerns and, because I think they're
Yeah,
significant.
and I will bring forward to the client, the applicant, the idea of the
Because
parking.
Westchester County is raising the same issue about parking in the front yards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody clean the culvert yet?
I don't know.
Dying to see what happens if you clean that.
Going for a public information.
Then you'll hear a big flush.
Huh?
Then you'll hear a big flush.
Where are we at on the secret review on this? Or we just beginning, right?
Well, it's open. We circulated lead agency. So
What is that, for 30 days? Yep.
lead agency is 30 days, but, you know, you won't declare lead agency until you do your resolution. That's typically how you guys do it. After 30 days, you're de facto.
I understand, I
Yeah, yeah.
understand. Okay. All right.
Anything else? We have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.